Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Easy English Spark channel. I'm so happy you're here today. Are you ready to take your English listening and speaking skills to the next level? Whether you're building your vocabulary, mastering new words, or learning how to use them in real-life contexts, we've got a fun and exciting journey ahead. Today, we'll explore ways to make learning as enjoyable as building a house, one brick at a time. We'll dive into some fun techniques to keep repetition fresh, use stories to bring words to life, and play some games to keep your practice on track. Let's get started and light up your English journey. Chapter 1: The Magic of Words. Hi there, I'm Selena, and today we're diving into something truly fascinating: the magic of words. You see, words are not just simple combinations of letters. They are the very building blocks of communication. They allow us to connect, express ideas, share emotions, and tell stories. But how often do we stop to think about the power words hold? When it comes to learning a new language, like English, one of the first things we need to do is build our vocabulary. Why? Because the more words you know, the easier it is to understand others, to be understood, and to express yourself clearly. Learning new words is like learning the tools you need to communicate in a way that feels natural and meaningful. Imagine trying to build a house without the right tools. You'd struggle, right? Well, learning a language without enough words is the same way. It's difficult to build sentences, make sense of conversations, or even think in that language if you don't have the words at your disposal. Now, let's talk about how to make this process easier and more enjoyable because, let's be honest, learning new words can feel tough sometimes. We've all had moments when we've learned a word, maybe even repeated it over and over, only to forget it the very next day. It can be frustrating, especially when it feels like no matter how hard we try, we just can't remember. But here's the thing: you're not alone. Everyone faces this challenge, even the most experienced language learners. So, how do we make this process easier and, dare I say, fun? The answer lies in understanding why memorizing words can be tough. Our brains are naturally wired to remember things that grab our attention or evoke some kind of emotion. Think about it. How many times have you remembered something because it was exciting, funny, or even a little shocking? When we feel something about a word, our brain is more likely to retain it. But if a word seems boring, irrelevant, or simply not connected to anything meaningful in our lives, it's easy to forget it. Let me give you an example. Imagine the word apple. What comes to your mind? You're probably picturing a shiny, red fruit. Maybe you even imagine the crisp, juicy taste as you take a bite. You can almost feel the crunch, right? This image is linked to the word apple in your mind, and that makes it much easier to remember. This is a trick that we can use for any word we learn. Connect it to something meaningful, something that makes it come alive in our minds. Whether it's an image, a feeling, or an experience, the more we connect a word to something we care about, the more likely we are to remember it. And here's the good news. There's no limit to how you can make words interesting to you. You can make them fun, exciting, and even emotional. For instance, let's say you love cooking. If you encounter the word recipe, you might immediately think about a dish you've made before, or perhaps a favorite recipe that your grandmother used to make. Spices might remind you of the rich aromas in the kitchen, and ingredients could bring to mind the joy of preparing a meal from scratch. When words are linked to something you love, like cooking, they become much easier to remember. This concept of making words meaningful isn't just a cool idea. It's rooted in how our brains work. Emotions and interest are powerful in memory retention. So, when you're learning new vocabulary, ask yourself, how can I make this word interesting? How can I tie it to something that excites me, or something that I find useful in my life? It could be as simple as imagining a story involving the word, or maybe thinking about how you would use it in a conversation with a friend. The key is to make the word come alive in your mind. Building your vocabulary is like planting seeds in a garden. When you plant a seed, you don't just leave it alone and expect it to grow by itself. You water it, you nurture it, and you give it sunlight. The same goes for words. The more time and attention you give to a word, the stronger and clearer it will become in your memory. And just like a plant, the more you care for it, the better it will grow. And if you ever need some inspiration, here's a quote from Dr. Seuss that I think perfectly captures the magic of learning new words. The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. Isn't that beautiful? This quote reminds us that learning new words isn't just about memorizing them. It's about opening up new doors. Every new word you learn takes you to a new place, helping you understand more and express yourself better. So, what's the best way to start? Begin with words that feel important to you. Don't try to tackle a huge list of words all at once. Start small and make learning part of your daily routine. It doesn't have to be overwhelming or stressful. In fact, it should be fun. Practice reading, listening, and speaking with new words as often as you can. The more you do this, the more natural it will feel, and soon enough, you'll notice your vocabulary expanding without even realizing it. To help you on this journey, I've uploaded videos on my website designed to make learning new words a fun and simple process. These videos focus on helping you practice and improve your vocabulary in a way that doesn't feel like hard work. Before we wrap up this chapter, I'd love to hear from you. What's the most recent English word you've learned? Drop it in the comments, and let's talk about how you can remember it better. I can't wait to hear your thoughts and experiences. Chapter 2: Understanding the difficulty of memorization. Hi again, it's Selena, and today we're going to tackle something that many of us struggle with when learning a new language: the difficulty of memorizing new words. If you've ever found yourself learning a new word, only to forget it a day later, you're definitely not alone. In fact, this is a challenge that many language learners face, even those who have been studying for years. But before we get frustrated, let's dive into why this happens, and more importantly, how we can overcome it. First, let's take a step back and understand the way our brains work when it comes to memory. Our brains are constantly processing new information, but it's important to realize that not all information gets stored in the same way. Some things we remember easily, while others seem to slip away with no explanation. Have you ever noticed that you can remember the plot of your favorite movie or the lyrics to a song you've heard 100 times, but struggle to recall the new word you just learned yesterday? There's a reason for that. Our brains are wired to remember things that are either emotionally charged or that grab our attention. In simple terms, if something feels important or resonates with us, our brain gives it more attention, and it becomes easier to remember. This is why, when we have strong emotions attached to an experience, it's often much easier to recall later. Think about a time when you were really excited about something, maybe a trip, a surprise, or a celebration. The details of that event stick with you, right? That's because emotions and attention are two key factors in how we memorize things. Now think about the opposite. Have you ever learned a word that felt dull or unimportant to you? Maybe it didn't seem like something you'd ever use, or maybe you just didn't connect with it. Chances are, that word slipped from your memory much quicker. This happens because without that emotional connection or interest, our brains don't prioritize the word, and it fades away. So, in short, the more attention or emotion we invest in a word, the more likely we are to remember it. But here's the catch. Not every word is going to spark excitement the moment you encounter it. Most words, especially when you're first starting to learn a language, will feel neutral or even foreign to you. And this is where the struggle begins, because the words we learn in a new language don't always carry the same emotional weight or context as words in our native language. They might not trigger those strong, memorable emotions right away, which makes it harder to retain them. So, what do we do about it? How do we make memorization easier when words don't always feel important or interesting at first? The first step is understanding that memorization is a process. It doesn't happen instantly. It takes time, attention, and a bit of creativity. One thing you can do to make memorization easier is to actively engage with the word. Simply repeating it over and over might not be enough to help it stick, but if you can connect the word to something personal, it becomes more meaningful. For example, let's say you're learning the word ocean. You could try to picture a scene in your mind. Imagine yourself standing on the beach, feeling the sand beneath your feet, and hearing the waves crash on the shore. The more vivid and personal you can make this image, the easier it will be to remember the word. Your brain is more likely to hold on to words when they're linked to something real, like a memory, an image, or even a feeling. Another strategy is to link new words to things you already know. This is a powerful memory technique because it helps your brain create connections. For example, if you're learning the word bicycle and you already know the word bike, you can link them together because they have similar meanings. By finding these connections, you're giving your brain an easier path to follow, which makes it much simpler to recall the new word later. When words are related, your brain can recognize patterns and strengthen the memory. But let's face it, sometimes even when we try these techniques, memorizing a word just doesn't feel like it's sticking. That's completely normal. In fact, this is where repetition comes in. It's not just about repeating a word once or twice and hoping it stays in your memory. Effective repetition is about reinforcing that word over time. When you review a word after a short period, say a day or two, and then review it again after a week, you're helping to transfer that word from your short-term memory into your long-term memory. This is called spaced repetition, and it's one of the most effective techniques for memorization. It's like giving your brain a little push to remind it of the word just before it starts to fade away. But we can't forget that learning words isn't just about memorizing them. It's also about using them. When you put a new word into practice, whether in conversation, writing, or even thinking about it during your daily routine, you're reinforcing it even more. This is why the saying, "use it or lose it," is so true. If you don't use a word, it's easy for it to slip away. But when you actively use the words you've learned, they become part of your active vocabulary and are much less likely to be forgotten. Now, Here's something you might not have thought about. Your attitude towards the process of learning can make a big difference too. If you approach learning with the mindset that it's going to be difficult or that you're not good at memorization, you're setting yourself up for frustration. On the other hand, if you approach it with curiosity and patience, understanding that it's okay if you forget a word now and then, you'll likely find that memorization becomes a lot easier. You'll be more open to trying different methods, experimenting with your learning, and ultimately, having more fun along the way. Let's recap what we've learned so far. Memorizing new words is difficult because our brains are more likely to remember things that catch our attention or spark emotions. However, we can make memorization easier by connecting words to meaningful images, linking new words to familiar ones, and using techniques like spaced repetition. And, of course, the more we use those words, the stronger the memory becomes. Lastly, remember that a positive attitude towards learning and a bit of patience can go a long way in overcoming the difficulty of memorization. So next time you feel like a word is slipping away from your memory, don't panic. Take a deep breath. Try one of these techniques and keep practicing. With time, you'll notice that memorization doesn't have to be so hard after all. It's a journey, and every step you take gets you closer to mastering the language. Chapter 3: The Role of Interest and Emotions in Learning. Hi, it's Selena again. In the last chapter, we talked about how memorizing new words can sometimes feel difficult, especially when we don't have a strong connection to those words. Now we're going to dive deeper into something that plays a huge role in the learning process: interest and emotions. When we talk about learning new words in English, or any language, it's easy to think that it's all about repetition, drills, and memorization. But what if I told you that there's something even more powerful at play here? What if I told you that interest and emotion are the key factors in how our brains remember words? That's right. The way we feel about a word, or how interesting we find it, can make all the difference in whether it sticks in our memory or fades away. So, why do interest and emotions matter so much when we're learning new vocabulary? Let's start by exploring how our brains work when we encounter new information. Our brains are like high-powered computers, constantly processing new data, sorting it, and deciding what to keep. But not all information gets the same treatment. Some things we remember easily, while others just slip away. Have you ever had an experience where you heard a word, and even though you didn't fully understand it, you couldn't forget it? Maybe it was the way the word sounded, or maybe it reminded you of something funny or surprising. That's because words that spark emotion or interest tend to be stored in our memory more easily. And on the flip side, when a word doesn't connect with us emotionally or doesn't seem relevant to our lives, it's much easier to forget it. Think about this for a moment. How many words do you remember because they are tied to a strong memory or feeling? For example, maybe the word birthday instantly brings up memories of your favorite birthday party or a special gift you received. Or maybe the word vacation makes you think of an unforgettable trip you took last year. These words stand out in your memory because they're linked to experiences and emotions that are meaningful to you. This is exactly why interest and emotions are so powerful when it comes to learning a new language. When we're emotionally invested in the learning process, our brains work harder to retain the information. And the more we care about something, the easier it is to remember. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're trying to memorize the word delicious. Now, imagine you're at your favorite restaurant, sitting down to enjoy your favorite meal, something you love eating. As you take that first bite, the taste is absolutely amazing. You might describe that meal as delicious, right? This word is tied to a real emotional experience for you. It's more than just a word. It's connected to something that made you feel good. So the next time you hear the word delicious, your brain will be more likely to remember it because it's tied to a moment of pleasure and joy. The magic of interest and emotion is that they make words come alive. It's not just about repeating a word over and over. It's about connecting it to something that has meaning in your life. When you learn words that resonate with you, it's like building a bridge between your personal experiences and the language. You're not just memorizing words in isolation, you're embedding them into your own story. Now think about when you're learning words that don't immediately grab your attention. Maybe you come across a word like taxi. It's a perfectly useful word, but it might not spark a strong emotional reaction right away, right? But here's the trick. You can create interest in these words. How? By connecting them to something you find exciting or meaningful. For instance, if you love traveling, you might imagine yourself hopping into a taxi while arriving in a foreign country. Or maybe you can picture the rush of catching a taxi to a meeting, with the clock ticking down, adding a little bit of drama to the scene. By turning this word into a part of your personal story or experience, you make it more engaging, and your brain will be more likely to remember it. But you might be thinking, how can I make every word emotionally engaging? Some words just aren't that exciting. Well, the good news is that you don't need to create a deep emotional connection with every word. What you can do is focus on the words that are relevant to you, the ones that will come up often in your conversations or in your life. For example, if you love reading books, words related to literature will be more engaging to you. If you're passionate about sports, words connected to your favorite game or team will stick with you much more easily. The key is to find the words that matter most in your daily life, because those are the ones that will have the biggest impact. There's another technique that can help you engage with words emotionally: storytelling. You've probably heard it said that stories are powerful tools for learning, and this is absolutely true. When we hear or tell a story, we become emotionally involved in it. The characters, the setting, the challenges, and the emotions. All of these elements pull us in and make the words more memorable. So, when you're learning new vocabulary, try to create little stories around the words. Even if it's just a simple scenario, like imagining yourself using the word in a conversation, this process of storytelling can turn a simple word into something far more meaningful. For example, let's say you're learning the word adventure. You could think about your last trip, or perhaps imagine a future journey to a place you've always dreamed of visiting. Picture yourself stepping off the plane, the excitement of exploring a new culture, and the thrill of discovering something new. That mental image adds emotion and excitement to the word adventure, making it easier to remember, and it doesn't stop there. Emotions and interest can help you improve your speaking and listening skills as well. For instance, if you're emotionally invested in a topic or conversation, you'll naturally be more motivated to learn the words related to it. If you love music, you might find it easier to learn words related to different musical instruments or genres. This interest drives you to keep learning and practicing those words, which means they're more likely to stick. Let's not forget that emotions and interest also make language learning more enjoyable. When you're interested in what you're learning, it's no longer a chore. You're excited to expand your vocabulary because you see the practical value in it, whether it's for talking about your hobbies, passions, or experiences. And when learning feels fun, you're more likely to stick with it over the long term. To wrap up, let me remind you, when it comes to learning new words, emotions and interest are incredibly powerful tools. They turn boring vocabulary into memorable experiences, make words come alive, and help your brain retain information. So next time you're learning a new word, ask yourself, how can I connect this word to something that excites me? How can I link it to something emotional or meaningful in my life? By doing this, you'll find that learning becomes much more enjoyable, and the words you learn will stick with you for the long haul. Chapter 4: Visualization, seeing the word. Hello again, it's Selena, and welcome to Chapter 4. Today, we're going to explore an incredibly powerful technique that can revolutionize the way you learn new words: visualization. You might have heard this term before, but today we're going to break it down and dive deep into how visualization can make learning vocabulary not just easier, but far more effective. So, what exactly is visualization? In simple terms, it's the process of creating mental images or pictures in your mind that represent words. Instead of just hearing or reading a word and trying to remember it, you connect it to something you can see, something that stands out in your mind. By making that connection, you transform the word into a vivid image, one that's much easier for your brain to remember and recall. Now, you may be wondering, why does visualization work so well? The answer lies in how our brains process information. Humans are naturally visual learners. Our brains are wired to process images and visual information faster and more efficiently than other types of data. This is why things like pictures, diagrams, and visual cues are often much easier to remember than abstract concepts or words alone. Let's do a quick experiment to understand this better. Think of the word dog. Close your eyes for a moment and try to picture a dog in your mind. What do you see? Maybe it's a fluffy golden retriever wagging its tail, or a playful puppy chasing after a ball. Now, think of the word imagination. What image comes to mind? You might not have a clear, vivid picture like you did with the word dog, because the word imagination is more abstract. This shows us that our brains are much better at remembering concrete images rather than abstract words. Now, let's connect this to language learning. When you learn a new word, try to picture it in your mind as clearly as possible. Instead of just repeating the word over and over, create a scene in your head. This process makes the word feel real, almost as though it's part of your world, which in turn makes it far easier to remember. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're learning the word apple. You could simply memorize the word by saying it over and over: apple, apple, apple. But how much more effective would it be if you close your eyes and visualize an apple? Imagine the shiny red skin, the smooth texture, and even the scent as you bring it close to your nose. You might even picture taking a bite and feeling the crunch as the juices burst in your mouth. Now that image is powerful, isn't it? Your brain can easily hold on to that picture of the apple, and the word becomes much easier to recall when you need it. Visualization works best when you make the image vivid and personal. The more detail you add, the stronger the memory becomes. Don't just picture an apple. Picture a specific apple, maybe the one you ate last week, or the one you bought at your favorite farmer's market. Maybe it's sitting on the kitchen counter and the sunlight is shining on it just right. The more personal the image, the more likely it is to stick in your memory. But here's the cool part. You can do this with any word. Let's try another example. Imagine you're learning the word mountain. Instead of just repeating the word or trying to memorize its definition, close your eyes and picture the tallest snow-capped peak you can imagine. Visualize yourself standing at the bottom of the mountain, looking up at its majestic, towering height. Can you see the sharp, jagged edges? Can you feel the cool, crisp air as the wind sweeps over the rocks? The more vivid and specific the image, the stronger the connection between the word and the image. Now, next time you hear the word mountain, that image will pop into your mind instantly. The key to making visualization work is emotion. When you add a little emotion to the image, it sticks even better. For example, imagine the word ocean. Instead of just thinking of a large body of water, picture yourself standing on the beach, feeling the sand between your toes, hearing the waves crash against the shore, and maybe even feeling the salty spray on your face. If you think about a personal memory, like a trip to the beach with friends or family, the emotion of that experience adds depth to the word, making it even more memorable. Your brain will hold on to that word because it's tied to something you felt, something you experienced, not just something you read in a textbook. Now you may be thinking, this sounds great, but what about words that aren't so easy to picture? Well, that's a great question. Some words, especially abstract ones, don't have a clear visual image attached to them. Take the word happiness as an example. It's not something you can see or touch in the same way you can see an apple or a mountain. But that doesn't mean you can't visualize it. You can still create a mental image to represent the word. Maybe it's a moment when you felt truly happy, perhaps with friends, family, or during a special event. You might picture a joyful moment, like laughing with loved ones or achieving something you've worked hard for. That mental image, even though it represents an abstract concept, still makes the word more tangible in your mind. For other abstract words like success or hope, you can visualize the emotions or outcomes that these words bring. For success, you might picture yourself reaching the top of a mountain after a long climb, feeling the satisfaction of achieving your goal. For hope, you might visualize a sunrise after a long, dark night, symbolizing the promise of a better day. The power of visualization is that you can create an image for almost any word, even if it's abstract. The more personal and emotional the image, the easier it will be to remember. And here's something to think about. You don't have to keep your visualizations in your mind alone. You can draw or write down the images you create. For example, after visualizing a word, try sketching it out in a notebook or even adding color and details to your mental picture. This kind of active engagement makes the connection even stronger. You might also want to connect words with actions. Imagine the word run. You don't just want to picture someone running. Think about a time when you went for a run yourself. Picture your legs moving, your breath getting faster, and the wind rushing past your face. The more you connect the action with the word, the more memorable it becomes. This helps you retain the word, not just as an abstract concept, but as something that's tied to a real-life experience. To wrap up, visualization is one of the most effective and enjoyable techniques you can use to learn new words. By connecting words to vivid personal images, you make them more memorable and easier to recall. Whether it's a simple object like an apple or something abstract like happiness, creating a mental picture turns the word into something real in your mind. And the more real and emotional that image is, the easier it will be to remember. So, the next time you learn a new word, don't just repeat it. See it in your mind's eye. Picture it, feel it, and watch how quickly it sticks. Chapter 5. Word Families. Connecting the Dots. Hi, it's Selena, and welcome to Chapter 5. Today, we're going to explore an incredibly powerful technique that can significantly boost your vocabulary learning. Word families. This method might sound a little technical, but trust me, it's one of the easiest and most efficient ways to expand your vocabulary without feeling overwhelmed. So, what exactly is a word family? In simple terms, a word family is a group of words that share the same base or root word. These words may have different forms or meanings, but they all come from the same core concept. Understanding word families is like discovering a secret shortcut to learning several words at once. Instead of memorizing each word separately, you can learn multiple related words all at the same time, which makes the process much faster and more effective. Let's break it down further. Imagine you already know the word happy. You might not realize it, but happy is part of a larger word family. Words like happiness, happily, and unhappy all belong to the same family. These words are built around the root word happy. And once you know one word in the family, learning the others becomes much easier. In fact, once you understand the meaning of happy, it's almost like you already understand happiness. happily, and unhappy to some extent, because they all share the same core idea. Now, why is learning word families so powerful? First, it saves time. Instead of having to memorize each word individually, you're essentially learning several related words with just one focus. Second, word families help you understand how words are connected, which improves your understanding of the language. It also helps you recognize patterns in the language, making it easier to guess the meaning of unfamiliar words based on the family they belong to. It's like connecting the dots. Once you see the pattern, everything clicks into place. Let's look at another example. Take the word act. This one word can give you several different words: action, actor, active, activity, react, and even activate. They all come from the same root, act, but they take on different meanings depending on the suffixes, the endings, added to the base word. Once you learn act, you've just unlocked the door to several other words in the family. And here's the best part. When you know one word, you can often guess the meanings of the others. For example, if you know actor, someone who performs in movies or plays, you can easily guess that activity refers to something you do or participate in. These words are all connected by their shared root, making them easier to remember. But word families don't just help you remember more words. They also help you understand how words work together in sentences. By learning word families, you're not just memorizing isolated vocabulary. You're learning how different forms of a word interact in context. This is especially useful for improving your speaking and writing skills, because when you know the different forms of a word, you'll be able to use them more naturally in sentences. Here's an example of how word families work in context. Let's say you know the word create. This word is part of a family that includes creation, creative, creativity, creator, and recreate. If you already know create, you can guess that creator is the person who makes something, while creative describes someone who has the ability to make new things. The word creativity refers to the quality of being creative, and recreate means to create something again. Knowing this family of words gives you a deeper understanding of how they fit together in the language, and it makes it easier to use them correctly. So, how do we use word families to our advantage? Here are a few practical strategies. Focus on the root word. When you learn a new word, take a moment to think about its root. What other words might come from it? For example, if you learn the word help, you can think of words like helper, helpful, and helpfulness. By learning these related words, you get a bigger picture of how help can be used in different contexts. Identify prefixes and suffixes. Many words in English have prefixes, like un, re, dis, and suffixes, like ing, ed, ly, that change the meaning of the root word. For example, dislike comes from the word like, but the prefix dis gives it the opposite meaning. Similarly, the word quick can become quickly when you add the suffix ly. By understanding these common prefixes and suffixes, you can easily create new words and expand your vocabulary. Learn word families in context. It's one thing to know the word create, but it's even more useful when you see it in action. Try to read sentences that use different forms of the word family. For example, the artist is very creative and has a lot of creativity in his work. He's also a great creator who loves to create new things. By seeing the word used in different contexts, you'll get a better sense of how the words interact and how they fit into the structure of the language. Use word families in your writing and speaking. Once you've learned a word family, practice using different forms of the word in your sentences. This will help you get comfortable with the word and its various forms. You could write a journal entry or have a conversation with someone using as many words from the same family as possible. For example, if you're talking about your favorite hobby, you might use words like interest, interested, and interesting. The more you practice using these words, the more natural they'll feel. Review word families regularly. To really cement these words in your memory, make it a habit to review them frequently. Repetition is key to remembering new vocabulary, and by focusing on word families, you can make your review sessions more efficient. Instead of memorizing isolated words, review them in groups, linked by their shared root word. Now, you may be wondering, why should I focus on word families rather than just learning a bunch of unrelated words? The answer is simple. Word families make learning easier and more efficient. By understanding how words are connected, you can build a stronger vocabulary foundation. You'll also develop a better understanding of the language, making it easier to guess the meanings of unfamiliar words. When you see a new word, you'll be able to recognize whether it's part of a word family and understand its meaning more quickly. Let's wrap up by reinforcing one key point. Word families are a game changer when it comes to learning vocabulary. By connecting related words, you'll not only expand your vocabulary faster, but you'll also gain a deeper understanding of how words work together in the language. So, next time you learn a new word, ask yourself, what other words belong to this family? By connecting the dots, you'll unlock a world of vocabulary that makes learning English both easier and more enjoyable. Chapter 6: The Power of Word Connections. Hello, it's Selena again, and welcome to Chapter 6. In this chapter, we're going to dive into a powerful technique that will supercharge your vocabulary learning: the power of word connections. If you've ever struggled to remember a word or its meaning, you'll be happy to hear that connecting words together is one of the most effective ways to make new vocabulary stick. So, what do we mean by word connections? Essentially, it's about linking new words to words you already know. The idea is simple. When you connect a new word to something familiar, you create a mental map or network of related words that helps you recall the new word more easily. This technique taps into your existing knowledge and builds on it, making language learning feel more intuitive. Let's take a step back and understand why word connections work so well. Think of your brain like a web, with each word representing a node in that web. When you learn a new word, it's like adding a new point to the web. However, this point is not isolated. It's connected to other words you already know. The more connections you make, the stronger and more interconnected your vocabulary becomes. This process doesn't just help you remember words more easily. It also helps you understand the meanings of words by placing them in a broader context. Imagine you're learning the word beautiful. You could simply memorize the definition of the word, but that might not be enough to make it stick. Instead, think about words that are connected to beautiful. For example, you might think of beauty, beautifully, and beautify. These words all come from the same root, and by connecting them together, you not only expand your vocabulary, but also gain a deeper understanding of how words are related. Now, let's explore a few ways to make word connections work for you. Connect synonyms and antonyms. One of the easiest ways to connect words is by linking them to synonyms, words with similar meanings, and antonyms, words with opposite meanings. For example, if you learn the word happy, you might also connect it to joyful, content, and cheerful, which are synonyms. These words all convey similar feelings but may be used in different contexts. On the other hand, you can also connect words to their antonyms to understand the full range of meanings. For instance, the antonyms of happy might include sad, unhappy, or miserable. By learning both synonyms and antonyms, you create a mental network where each word is connected to others with similar or opposite meanings. This not only helps you understand words better, but also gives you more options when you want to express yourself in different ways. By connecting synonyms and antonyms, you can see how the meanings of words change depending on context, which will allow you to use words more precisely and confidently. Look for word families and roots. Another powerful way to connect words is by identifying their root words and exploring the word families they belong to. As we talked about in the previous chapter, a word family is a group of words that share the same root or base word. For example, the root word act leads to words like action, actor, active, and activity. These words are all connected by the same core idea, and by recognizing this connection, you can learn multiple related words at once. Understanding the root word and its family gives you insight into the meaning of related words. For example, knowing that active comes from the root act helps you understand that it's something related to taking action or being engaged. You can use this understanding to learn new words in the same family and guess their meanings more easily. When you encounter a new word, try to break it down into its root and look for other words that belong to the same family. 3. Link words to personal experiences. The most effective connections often happen when you link new words to your own personal experiences. This strategy makes the word more meaningful and easier to remember. Let's take the word journey as an example. Instead of just memorizing the word and its definition, think about a time when you went on a trip. Perhaps your last vacation, a road trip with friends, or even the journey of learning a new skill. By connecting the word journey to your own life, you create a personal story around it, and that story helps the word stick. Personal connections add emotional weight to the word, which is why they are so effective. When a word is tied to an experience or a feeling, your brain is more likely to store it in long-term memory. This is why words like family or home are so easy to remember. They have strong emotional connections to many of us. Use visual and contextual connections. Sometimes, words don't immediately make sense when you hear them, but visual and contextual clues can help you understand and connect them. For example, let's say you learn the word giraffe. To connect it to something familiar, picture a tall, spotted animal with a long neck in a savanna. The visual image of a giraffe immediately gives you a strong connection to the word. Context is another important factor. For example, if you learn the word bank in the context of money, you connect it to financial institutions. But if you learn the word bank in the context of a river, you'll connect it to the edge or shore of the river. The more you can understand the context in which a word is used, the better you'll be able to remember it. Create a mental map of word connections. One fun and effective way to visually represent word connections is by creating a mental map or word web. Start with a central word in the middle of the page, then draw lines connecting it to related words, synonyms, antonyms, and any other words that come to mind. For example, if you start with the word happy, you could draw branches connecting it to words like joyful, content, cheerful, and sad as an antonym. You could also link it to phrases or images that represent happiness, like a birthday party or a sunny day. This visual representation of word connections helps solidify the relationship between words, making it easier to recall them when needed. Plus, it's a fun way to organize your vocabulary. Practice using connected words in sentences. The best way to reinforce word connections is to practice using them in sentences. Once you've identified several related words, try to use them together in a conversation or a written exercise. For example, if you're practicing the word happy, use related words like joyful and cheerful in different sentences. This will not only reinforce the meaning of each word, but will also help you understand how they interact in different contexts. For example, she felt so happy after receiving the surprise gift. His cheerful personality made everyone around him smile. The joyful music played all night long. By using connected words in real sentences, you'll get more comfortable with their meanings and learn how to use them naturally in conversations. Conclusion: strengthening your vocabulary with word connections. In this chapter, we've seen how word connections can transform the way you learn new vocabulary. By connecting new words to familiar ones, to personal experiences, or even to images and contexts, you can create a mental network that makes words easier to remember and use. Whether through synonyms, antonyms, word families, or visual associations, the key is to link new words to something you already know. This not only helps you remember them better, but also deepens your understanding of how words function in the language. The more connections you create, the more your vocabulary will grow and strengthen. So, next time you learn a new word, ask yourself, how can I connect this word to something I already know? By making these connections, you'll find that learning new words becomes not just easier, but also more enjoyable. Keep practicing and connecting the dots, and watch your vocabulary expand. Chapter 7. Practice Makes Permanent. Hello again, it's Selena. Welcome to Chapter 7. In this chapter, we're going to talk about something incredibly important when it comes to learning new words: practice. You've probably heard the saying, practice makes perfect. But when it comes to language learning, I'd like to tweak that saying a little bit. Practice makes permanent. Let me explain why this small change is crucial to your learning process. We all know that practice is essential for mastering any skill. Whether it's playing a musical instrument, playing sports, or learning a new language, repetition and consistent practice are the keys to improvement. But here's the catch. It's not just about practicing once or twice and hoping you'll get it right. It's about practicing regularly, consistently, and meaningfully. When you practice in the right way, the things you've learned become ingrained in your mind. And this is where the concept of permanent practice comes into play. Why practice makes permanent. Think about something you've learned in your life, maybe a skill, a hobby, or a new habit. The things that really stick with you are the ones you've practiced consistently over time. Let's take language learning as an example. If you learn a word and never use it again, it's like planting a seed and never watering it. Over time, that seed will dry up, and the word will fade from your memory. However, if you practice using that word in different contexts, in conversations, or in writing, the word becomes stronger in your memory. The more you practice, the more it stays in your long-term memory. Here's a simple analogy. Imagine that your brain is like a garden. When you first learn a new word, it's like planting a seed. But just like a seed needs water, sunlight, and attention to grow, so does the word. Practice is like the water and sunlight for your brain. The more you practice, the stronger and more deeply rooted that word becomes in your memory. Without practice, the seed may never grow, and you'll forget the word. But with consistent practice, that word will grow and thrive in your brain. This idea of practice makes permanent means that with enough time and effort, the words you've learned will become part of your vocabulary for good. They will become second nature, ready to be used whenever you need them. The importance of consistency and practice. Consistency is the key to making your learning permanent. It's not about cramming all your vocabulary into one intense study session and then forgetting about it for the next week. Instead, it's about practicing a little bit every day. It's the daily habit of reviewing and using the words you've learned that will make them stick. Think of it as building muscle. You can't build strength by lifting weights once in a while. You need to work out regularly and build up that muscle over time. Similarly, by practicing your vocabulary every day, you strengthen your knowledge and make it more permanent. For example, if you learn 10 new words today, but don't use them in any way until next week, you might forget half of them. But if you review those words every day, use them in sentences, and try to incorporate them into your daily conversations, they will stick with you much more easily. This consistent practice creates neural connections in your brain that reinforce the words and phrases you've learned, making them permanent. The power of spaced repetition. One of the most effective ways to practice and make new vocabulary permanent is through spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is a technique where you review a word or concept at increasing intervals over time. For example, you might review a word the day after you learn it, then again a few days later, then a week after that, and so on. The idea is to space out your reviews just before you're about to forget the word. This method helps strengthen your memory and ensures that the word stays in your long-term memory. Spaced repetition is based on how our brains work. When we first learn something, it's fresh in our memory. But over time, if we don't revisit it, it fades away. By reviewing at spaced intervals, you're giving your brain the perfect amount of time to process and remember the word. You're also preventing the word from fading into the background. Tools like flashcards or apps that use spaced repetition, like Anki or Quizlet, can be very helpful for this. This technique is incredibly effective because it optimizes the timing of your reviews. You're not overwhelming your brain with constant repetition all at once, but instead, you're reinforcing the word when it's just about to slip away from your memory. This not only makes the word stick, but it also makes the process of learning feel less overwhelming and more manageable. Practice in real-life contexts. Another key aspect of making your practice permanent is using the words you've learned in real-life contexts. It's one thing to memorize a word, but it's another thing entirely to use it in a sentence, a conversation, or in writing. The more you practice using the word in real situations, the more permanent it becomes in your memory. For example, let's say you've learned the word disappointed. To make this word permanent in your memory, try to use it in conversations. Maybe you tell a friend, "I was disappointed when I couldn't attend the party." Or you might write a short journal entry about a time when you were disappointed. By actively using the word in different contexts, you create associations in your brain that make the word more meaningful and easier to recall. Additionally, you can immerse yourself in the language by listening to podcasts, watching TV shows, or reading articles in English. Seeing and hearing words used in different contexts will reinforce your learning and help you internalize them. Using different forms of practice. To make your practice even more effective, try mixing up how you practice. Don't just rely on one method. Use a combination of activities to engage with the words in different ways. Here are some ideas. Speaking practice. Find a language partner or a tutor and practice using the words in conversation. If you don't have someone to practice with, try speaking to yourself out loud. Describe what you're doing, think aloud, or tell a story using the new words you've learned. Writing practice. Write sentences, short paragraphs, or even entire essays using the words you've learned. Writing helps reinforce your memory and makes the words feel more permanent. Listening practice. Listen to podcasts, songs, or videos in English. Pay attention to how native speakers use the words in context and try to identify them when you hear them. Reading practice. Read books, articles, or even social media posts in English. Highlight new words and review them regularly to keep them fresh in your mind. By practicing in different ways, you'll reinforce the words in your memory and deepen your understanding of how to use them in various contexts. The role of patience and persistence. Lastly, it's important to remember that practice makes permanent, but it takes time. Learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. Don't get discouraged if you don't see instant results. The more consistently you practice, the more permanent your vocabulary will become. Even on days when it feels like you're not making much progress, keep going. Small steps add up over time, and eventually, you'll look back and see how far you've come. As the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is your vocabulary. It takes patience, persistence, and a lot of practice. But the good news is that with every word you learn and practice, you're one step closer to mastering the language. Conclusion: making learning permanent. To wrap up this chapter, let me remind you, practice is the key to making new words permanent in your memory. The more you practice, the stronger the connections in your brain become. Use spaced repetition, engage in real-life practice, mix up your practice methods, and above all, be patient with yourself. The more consistent and deliberate your practice, the more permanent your vocabulary will be. So, here's your challenge. Today, make a commitment to practice every day. Pick 5 words you've learned recently, review them, and try using them. In conversation or writing, keep practicing, and remember, practice makes permanent. Chapter 8. Using words in real-life contexts. Hello, it's Selena. Welcome to Chapter 8, where we're going to talk about one of the most important strategies for making new vocabulary truly stick: using words in real-life contexts. You may have already learned words through repetition, memorization, or even through the techniques we've discussed earlier. But the key to truly mastering a language is to take those words and use them in real-life situations. This is what turns your vocabulary from something theoretical into something practical that you can use every day. Why real-life contexts matter. Let's start by understanding why using words in real-life contexts is so important. When you learn a new word, you're not just memorizing a definition. You're learning how that word fits into the world around you. A word has more power and meaning when you understand how it's used in different situations, with different people, and in different environments. Imagine learning the word happy. If you only memorize the dictionary definition of happy, you know what it means in a general sense, but you don't understand how it feels or how it's used in everyday life. However, if you use happy in real contexts, such as when you describe a recent event that made you happy, or talk about a movie that made you feel good, you connect with the word on a deeper level. It becomes more meaningful, and the next time you try to recall it, it will be easier to remember because it's now tied to real experiences. Using words in real-life contexts also makes them more relevant to your everyday life. The more you connect vocabulary to your routine activities, the more natural it will feel to use those words when you need them. This is how you move from knowing vocabulary to actively using it. How to use words in real-life contexts. Now, let's talk about some practical ways to use words in real-life contexts. Here are some strategies you can start using immediately to ensure that your vocabulary becomes a living, breathing part of your language use. Engage in conversations. One of the most effective ways to practice using new vocabulary is by having conversations. When you use words in conversations, they don't just stay in your mind as abstract concepts. They become part of the exchange of ideas. This allows you to actively recall and use the words in a way that feels natural and immediate. If you don't have someone to speak with, you can practice speaking to yourself. It may sound strange at first, but try talking out loud about your day, what you're thinking, or even describing things around you. For example, if you learned the word frustrated, try talking about a situation where you felt frustrated, like waiting in a long line or trying to finish a difficult task. Saying it out loud will reinforce the word and make it easier to remember. Another great way to practice is by finding a language exchange partner or joining a conversation group. There are many online platforms where you can connect with people who speak the language you're learning. Engaging in real conversations with someone will challenge you to use words in real-time situations, making it a practical and efficient way to practice. Write regularly. Writing is another fantastic way to use words in real-life contexts. By writing about your experiences, thoughts, or plans, you can integrate the new vocabulary you've learned into your daily life. The key is to focus on writing naturally. Instead of writing formal exercises, try to create sentences or paragraphs that reflect your real thoughts and feelings. For example, let's say you recently learned the word excited. You could write a short journal entry about something you're looking forward to, like an upcoming trip, a project, or an event. By using the word in a personal context, you make it more meaningful. And the more you write, the more familiar these words will become in your writing. You can also try creative writing, like writing short stories or diary entries where you use new vocabulary in various contexts. For example, write a story about a character who's feeling nervous or happy, or use the word adventure to describe a journey they go on. The more you write, the more you'll reinforce the words in your memory. 3. Practice through role-playing. If you want to add a fun element to practicing words, try role-playing. This technique is especially useful if you want to practice vocabulary in specific situations, like ordering food in a restaurant or having a job interview. Role-playing helps you simulate real-life scenarios where you can actively use new words. For instance, if you're learning words related to traveling, create a role-play where you pretend to check into a hotel or ask for directions in a foreign city. Even if you're practicing by yourself, it's a great way to get comfortable with using words in context. If you have a language partner, you can take turns being the customer and the service worker, making the practice feel more like a real conversation. Incorporate words into your daily life. One of the simplest ways to use new vocabulary in real life contexts is to incorporate it into your daily activities. This can be as easy as describing your surroundings or events as they happen. For example, if you're walking outside and you see something beautiful, use the word scenic or picturesque to describe the view. If you're cooking, talk about the recipe and the ingredients you're using. You can also try to label things in your environment with new words. For example, if you're learning words related to food, write the names of different foods on sticky notes and place them on your fridge or around your kitchen. Every time you see a new word, say it out loud or try to use it in a sentence. By surrounding yourself with the language, you'll naturally begin to use those words more often. Another great idea is to use new words in your social media posts. If you're on platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, try to write posts that use the words you've been learning. This not only helps you practice, but it also encourages you to think creatively about how to use the language in different contexts. Listen to native speakers. Listening to native speakers is an excellent way to see how words are used in natural contexts. Podcasts, movies, TV shows, and YouTube videos are full of everyday language that will expose you to how words are used in real conversations. Pay attention to the context in which new words are used, how they're pronounced, and the emotions or situations they relate to. After listening, try to mimic or shadow what you've heard. This means repeating sentences or phrases you hear from native speakers. By practicing this technique, you'll get a sense of how words fit into natural conversations and can use them in similar situations. Engage in active reading. Reading is a great way to see how words are used in context. When you read, pay attention not just to the meaning of words, but to how they function in sentences and paragraphs. For example, if you come across a new word while reading a book, try to understand its meaning based on the context in which it's used. Once you have an idea, try to use that word in your own sentences. To make this even more effective, you could highlight or underline the new words you find in your reading material. Then, go back later and try to use those words in your own writing or conversations. By linking the words to real situations in stories or articles, you're reinforcing their meaning and use. Keep a vocabulary journal. A vocabulary journal can be a helpful tool to track your progress and ensure that you're using words in real-life contexts. Each time you learn a new word, write it down along with a sentence that uses it in context. You could also add a brief note about how the word is used or any personal experiences you have with it. For example, if you learn the word grateful, you might write, "I felt grateful when I received a thoughtful gift from my friend." The more examples you add, the more you'll be able to see how words are used in different contexts and situations. Conclusion: the importance of using words in context. To sum it up, the key to mastering new vocabulary is using words in real-life contexts. It's not enough to just memorize them. The real magic happens when you integrate them into your everyday life, whether through conversations, writing, role-playing, or even just describing the world around you. The more you use words in context, the more natural they will feel, and the easier it will be to recall them when you need them. So don't just memorize words, live with them. Practice them in real-life situations, and you'll see how much faster your language skills improve. Keep using the words you've learned, and you'll soon find that your vocabulary isn't just something you remember, it's something you actively use. Chapter 9: Keeping Repetition Fun. Hi, it's Selena. Welcome to Chapter 9, where we're going to explore a crucial concept in learning new vocabulary: repetition. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Repetition? Isn't that boring? The truth is, repetition is one of the most effective tools for cementing words in your memory. But here's the thing. Repetition doesn't have to be boring. In this chapter, I'm going to show you how to keep repetition fun, exciting, and engaging so that you actually enjoy the process of reinforcing your vocabulary. Why is repetition important? First, let's take a quick step back and understand why repetition is so important. When you learn a new word, it's easy to forget it after a few hours, days, or even weeks. This happens because your brain needs time to process the word and commit it to long-term memory. Without repetition, that word can easily fade away into the background. Repetition helps reinforce the neural connections in your brain that are associated with that word. The more you see, hear, or use a word, the more solid those connections become. Over time, this makes the word easier to recall and use naturally in conversation. So, repetition is absolutely necessary, but if it's done in a monotonous or repetitive way, it can quickly become tedious. That's why the key is to make repetition enjoyable and keep it exciting. The secret to fun repetition: spaced repetition. Before we dive into how to make repetition fun, let's talk about spaced repetition, a technique that can make repetition feel less like a chore. Spaced repetition is all about reviewing words at increasing intervals over time. For example, you review a word a day after you learn it, then 3 days later, then a week after that, and so on. The idea is to review the word just before you're about to forget it. This method optimizes the timing of your repetitions so that they're more effective and less overwhelming. Spaced repetition works because it taps into the brain's natural ability to strengthen memories over time. Tools like flashcards, especially digital ones like Anki or Quizlet, are perfect for this. They allow you to review words at intervals that increase over time, helping to keep them fresh in your memory without feeling repetitive in a boring way. So, while spaced repetition is one of the most efficient ways to keep words in your long-term memory, we can still spice it up by adding some fun to the process. Use flashcards creatively. Flashcards are often the first tool people think of when they hear repetition, and for good reason. They're an effective way to review vocabulary. But let's be honest. Using flashcards in a plain standard format can get dull. So, why not get creative with your flashcards to make repetition more enjoyable? Here are a few ideas. Add pictures. when you're reviewing a new word, add a relevant picture or drawing to your flashcard. For example, if you're learning the word mountain, include a photo or illustration of a mountain. Visual imagery helps reinforce the meaning of the word and makes the flashcards more engaging. Create sentences. Instead of just having the word on one side and the definition on the other, make your flashcards more interactive. Write a sentence with the word on the back, or try creating multiple sentences to show how the word can be used in different contexts. Use colors and themes. Make your flashcards visually interesting by using different colors, highlighting important information, or organizing them into themes. For instance, group all food-related vocabulary on one set of cards and all travel-related vocabulary on another. The color coding can make it more fun and easier to remember. By personalizing your flashcards, you add a bit of creativity to the process, which makes repetition less monotonous and more enjoyable. Gamify your learning. Games are an incredible way to make repetition fun. By turning vocabulary review into a game, you engage not only your memory, but also your competitive spirit and sense of fun. Here are a few ideas for gamifying your learning. Flashcard games. Challenge yourself or a friend to a flashcard game where you need to recall the word or its definition as quickly as possible. You could time yourself to see how fast you can go, or race against a friend to see who gets the most answers right. Online vocabulary quizzes. There are many apps and websites that offer interactive quizzes and games for vocabulary practice. Platforms like Quizlet offer various game modes like Match and Gravity, which make learning vocabulary feel like a fun, competitive activity. You could even challenge a friend to a vocabulary quiz. Scrabble and word games. Games like Scrabble, Boggle, or crossword puzzles are excellent ways to practice your vocabulary while having fun. They encourage you to think creatively about how words can fit together, and they make repetition feel less like a task and more like a game. Memory games. Use memory card games like Memory Match to practice words. You can create 2 sets of cards, one with the word and one with the definition. Spread them out face down and try to match the word to its definition. The more you play, the better you'll remember the words. By turning your vocabulary review into a game, you make repetition something you look forward to instead of something you dread. Turn vocabulary review into a daily challenge. Another fun way to keep repetition exciting is by setting up daily challenges. Every day, give yourself a set number of words to review and use in different contexts. You could also challenge yourself to learn a certain number of words, or to use them in sentences. For example, daily word challenge. Choose 5 new words to learn each day and challenge yourself to use each word in a conversation or a written sentence by the end of the day. Themed word challenge. Pick a theme each week, such as food, travel, emotions, etc., and focus on reviewing and using words related to that theme. This gives your learning structure, and it keeps things interesting. Vocabulary. Bingo. Create a bingo card with different words or phrases you want to review. Each day, try to use the words on your card in real-life situations or sentences. Once you've used all the words in one row, you've got bingo. Daily challenges keep things dynamic and give you something to look forward to. It's a great way to mix repetition with a sense of accomplishment. Use music, movies, and TV shows. If you love music, movies, or TV shows, you can incorporate these into your repetition routine. Watching a movie or listening to a song in English gives you the opportunity to hear words used in real-life contexts, which reinforces your learning. But here's the fun part. You can actively look for the words you've learned while you watch. For example, song lyrics. When you listen to a song, try to write down new words you hear. Then, look up the meaning of those words and try using them in your sentences. Songs are a fun way to practice repetition because they give you words and phrases that repeat, which helps reinforce them. Movies and TV shows. Watch a movie or TV show and try to pick out words or phrases that you've been learning. When you hear them, pause the video, repeat the word, and think about how it's used in context. You can even try mimicking the character's pronunciation and intonation to make it more engaging. By connecting your vocabulary practice to things you enjoy, like music and entertainment, you turn repetition into something you look forward to rather than something you have to force yourself to do. Incorporate words into your daily life. Finally, don't forget to use repetition in your everyday activities. The more you integrate new words into your daily routine, the less repetition will feel like a chore. For example, if you've learned the word delicious, try to use it every time you talk about food or drinks. If you learned the word excited, try to use it when you describe your feelings about events in your life. The more natural you make the repetition, the more it becomes a part of your language use. You can even keep a journal where you write about your day and incorporate the new words you've learned. Reflecting on your day using the words makes repetition feel like a natural part of your life, not just a practice session. Conclusion: enjoying repetition. To wrap up, repetition is one of the most powerful tools you have for mastering a language. But that doesn't mean it has to be boring. By getting creative with your repetition, whether it's through flashcards, games, challenges, or using words in real-life contexts, you can keep your learning process fun and engaging. So, the next time you need to review vocabulary, try something new. Turn it into a game, a challenge, or even a creative exercise that you enjoy. Remember, the more you practice, the more permanent your vocabulary will become, and the more enjoyable the process will be. Keep practicing, keep having fun, and most importantly, keep learning. Chapter 10. The Fun Side of Learning. Stories and Games. Hello again, it's Selena. Welcome to Chapter 10. In this chapter, we're going to dive into something that makes language learning exciting, creative, and memorable. Stories and games. Let's face it, learning a new language can sometimes feel like a long journey, especially when it comes to remembering vocabulary and grammar. But when you add stories and games into the mix, learning becomes not just easier, but a lot more fun. In fact, these tools are so powerful that they can make learning feel more like an adventure than a task. So, let's talk about how you can bring some joy into your vocabulary practice through stories and games. Why stories and games? Before we dive into the fun details, let's understand why stories and games are such great tools for learning. First of all, they're engaging. Stories naturally captivate our attention, and games introduce an element of play and challenge, which makes us want to keep going. When learning feels fun, we're more motivated to keep practicing, and we're less likely to get bored. Additionally, stories and games make words stick. When you use words in a context, especially in an engaging and memorable story or game, your brain is more likely to remember them. Think about how easy it is to remember the plot of your favorite movie or book. That's because it's not just the words that stay in your memory. It's the images, emotions, and experiences tied to those words. The same principle applies when you're learning a language. Let's now explore how stories and games can make repetition enjoyable and how you can incorporate them into your language learning routine. Using stories to reinforce vocabulary. Stories are a fantastic way to practice vocabulary and context. Why? Because stories give words meaning and emotion, making them much easier to remember. Instead of simply memorizing lists of words, you're experiencing them in situations that are relatable and memorable. Let's consider a simple example. Imagine you're learning the word excited. If you only memorize its definition, It might be hard to remember the word when you need it. But if you hear or create a short story about someone who is excited, the word becomes much more meaningful. For example, Sarah was so excited when she found out she was going to the concert with her best friend. She couldn't stop smiling as she thought about the music, the crowd, and the amazing time she would have. Now, this story connects the word excited to an emotion, a person, and a situation. This gives the word more context and makes it easier to remember. You can create stories around any word you're learning. The key is to make the story personal or relatable. Think of situations in your life, movies, or even imagined scenarios where the word could fit. You can even create short mini-stories for each new word you learn. Another idea is to use stories from books or movies. Whenever you come across a new word in a story, pause and note how the word is used in context. This helps you see how the word works in sentences and different situations. Creating your own stories. If you're feeling creative, you can try to write your own stories using the words you've learned. This is an excellent way to practice vocabulary and grammar while being creative. You can start small with just a sentence or two, and as you get more comfortable, build your story up. It's fun to invent characters, places, and situations that make sense for the new words. For example, adventure. As the sun set behind the mountains, Jake couldn't wait for the adventure ahead. He had been dreaming of this moment for years, and now his journey into the wild was about to begin. Nervous. Tina felt nervous as she walked onto the stage. The bright lights made her heart race, but she knew she was ready for this moment. The beauty of creating your own stories is that they are personal to you. You get to use the words in a way that feels natural and fun. It also helps you see how these words interact with each other in a sentence, which strengthens your understanding and use of them. Incorporating games into vocabulary practice. Now let's talk about games. The wonderful thing about games is that they make repetition feel playful and competitive. When you play a game, your mind is focused on winning or having fun, and that naturally makes repetition less of a chore. Here are a few game ideas you can use to practice vocabulary. A. Flashcard games. Flashcards are one of the simplest and most effective ways to review vocabulary. But let's turn them into a game. You can make flashcards more interactive by adding challenges to your practice sessions. For example, speed challenge. Time yourself to see how fast you can go through your flashcards. You can try to beat your previous time or challenge a friend to see who can get the most correct answers in the shortest amount of time. Memory match. Write the vocabulary word on one set of cards and the definition on another. Lay them face down. And try to match the word with its definition, like a memory matching game. B. Crossword puzzles. Another fantastic game for learning vocabulary is crossword puzzles. Crossword puzzles force you to recall words based on their definitions and use them in a specific context. Many online platforms have free crossword puzzles that are designed specifically for language learners, or you can create your own using the vocabulary you've learned. You can even make your own vocabulary puzzle challenges where you write down clues for other learners to guess, or have a competition to see who can finish the puzzle the fastest. You'll be practicing words in a way that feels like a fun puzzle. C. Hangman. You can play the classic word game Hangman using your vocabulary words. Write down a word with blanks for each letter and challenge yourself or a friend to guess the letters. Every wrong guess means you draw part of the stick figure, so you have to think carefully about each letter you choose. This is a fun way to engage with words while reinforcing your spelling and recall. D. Word search. A word search is another excellent way to practice vocabulary. In a word search, you're given a grid of letters and have to find hidden words. This game helps reinforce vocabulary by having you visually search for and recognize the words you've learned. You can find online tools to create your own custom word searches or use pre-made ones that focus on certain themes, like food, travel, or emotions. Scrabble or Boggle. Both Scrabble and Boggle are fantastic games for vocabulary building. In Scrabble, you create words on a board using letter tiles, trying to make the highest scoring words. This is a great way to practice spelling and recall. In Boggle, you search for as many words as possible in a grid of random letters. This game is fast-paced, fun, and helps you practice word formation quickly. Group games and activities. If you have a group of friends or classmates who are also learning English, try playing some group games. Here are a few fun ideas for group activities. Charades. Charades is a game where you act out a word without speaking, and the other players have to guess what it is. This is a great way to practice vocabulary because it forces you to think about how you can express the word without using language. You can make it even more fun by choosing words related to themes or categories. Story building. In this game, each player adds one sentence to a story, but they can only use the vocabulary words you're learning. The challenge is to make the Story makes sense while using as many words as possible. You'll be amazed at how creative and funny these stories can get. 5. Using digital games and apps. If you're tech-savvy, there are a variety of apps and websites that turn learning vocabulary into a game. Some popular language learning apps like Duolingo, Memrise, or Babbel use a game-based approach to make learning more fun. These apps use repetition, rewards, and progress tracking to keep you motivated while practicing new words. Another fun app to check out is Quizlet. You can create flashcards and then test yourself through various game modes, such as Match or Gravity, where you race against time to match words with their definitions. These apps and games help you track your progress and keep your learning exciting. Conclusion: the fun and rewarding side of learning. To sum it up, stories and games are powerful tools for language learning because they turn repetition into something engaging and enjoyable. Whether it's through creating your own stories, playing word games, or using digital platforms, there are endless ways to make vocabulary practice fun. These activities not only make learning more enjoyable, but also help solidify your vocabulary in a way that's meaningful and long-lasting. So, go ahead and give these stories and games a try. Start by creating a fun story with your new words, playing a game, or challenging yourself to use new words in your daily life. The more you make learning feel like a game, the more you'll enjoy it, and the more permanent those words will become in your memory. Remember, learning doesn't have to be a grind. Keep it fun, stay creative, and most importantly, keep learning. Great work today. Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.